It's time, my friends, for another Devo tip on the anti-kingdom. We're going to look at Pharaoh's politics of fear. Well, the Israelites came to Egypt as refugees during a famine. After Joseph died, Egypt had achieved superpower status. It had the strongest economy, the fiercest military, and the most powerful gods. So Pharaoh was king of the ancient world. He just needed some cheap labor to build his empire. So he quickly passed some new legislation to force the refugees into slavery. The Hebrews would take the jobs that no Egyptian wanted. I'm quoting from Barton Swaim here from a recent Wall Street Journal article. He says the point of the Exodus story isn't to analyze the psychology of dictators, but the Bible's histories often reveal patterns of human behavior so recognizable as to seem ripped from yesterday's headlines. Yeah, Pharaoh's politics of fear should sound familiar to us, unfortunately. First, deliberately amplify suspicion of a targeted group. This is what Pharaoh says. The people of Israel are too many and too mighty for us. Suddenly, the Hebrews are a threat to the empire. And then second, exaggerate threats to security by demonizing the target. Pharaoh says if war breaks out, they'll join our enemies and fight against us. He knows that people rally against a dreaded enemy. And third, justify reinforcement measures. Notice what they did. They made the Hebrews' lives bitter with hard service in all kinds of work in the field. In all their work, they ruthlessly made them work as slaves. Pharaoh had successfully dehumanized the target. The anti-kingdom seemed unstoppable. Well, when you look at Pharaoh's little cobra hat, he believed that it infused him with superpowers. So the Egyptian wise men and sorcerers and magicians were simply under his command. According to Egyptologist James Hoffmeyer, the Hebrew word for magicians means chief lector priests. So, in other words, these guys were not like David Copperfield. They were highly trained elite professionals who channeled cosmic forces by their secret arts. The whole point of the Exodus account is to make a distinction. Moses displayed God's power with no incantations, whereas Pharaoh's courts used spells and occult rituals to harness the power of the anti-kingdom as an act of spiritual deception. Even the often cited snake charming trick, which pinches the nerve on the snake's neck to induce paralysis, doesn't work here. The snakes did not turn into staffs. The staffs turn into snakes. The anti-kingdom can mimic God to mock and deceive people, but it can't defeat God or thwart or undo the purposes of God. In fact, all the antics of the anti-kingdom only exacerbates every situation. So by making things worse, the anti-kingdom ironically ends up driving people to acknowledge the one true God. The anti-kingdom clearly campaigns on fear-mongering. So how should we respond? We can look for toxic language that's rude and sarcastic. The anti-kingdom loves to exaggerate, gaslight, and demonize. So we need to see it for what it is. It's a game. People play mind games for several reasons, but the goal is always to gain a sense of control or power. And Moses did not play the game. When facing unethical behavior, he spoke directly to Pharaoh with the kind of moral strength that honored the Lord. So keep taking God at his word. Just like Moses and Aaron, they repeatedly did just as the Lord commanded them and grew bolder with each plague. Finally, my friends, God frees people not so that they can serve no Lord, but so that they can serve the true Lord. As Paul would say, you were bought at a price. Do not become slaves of human beings.